بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد سيد المرسلين وخاتم النبيين وعلى آله وأصحابه الطيبين الطاهرين ومن اتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت يا حي يا قيوم تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا اللهم ذكرنا ما نسينا وعلمنا ما جهلنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من حال أهل النار نخلص نوايانا لله تعالى. I praise Allah, I glorify Him, and I thank Him for all the blessings that He gives without Him being obligated to give anything. And I ask Allah Ta'ala to raise the rank of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and to protect his Muslim nation. I testify that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah Ta'ala, the one without a partner, the one without an equal, the one without a similar, the one who is unlike anything in the universe and nothing in the universe is like Him. He has no father, no mother, no sister, no brother, no son, and no daughter. He exists without time and place because He is the creator of time and place. He does not reside above the throne like the Christians say, and He is not attributed with fatigue like the Jews say. Our Lord is glorified beyond any imperfection that the non-Muslims attribute to Him. Whatever you imagine in your mind, Allah Ta'ala is different than that. Whoever attributes an attribute of creation to Allah is not a Muslim. And I testify that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the son of Abdullah, the son of Abdul Muttalib, the son of Hashim, the son of Abdul Manaf, from the tribe of Quraysh, is the best creation of Allah and His final prophet and messenger, sent to all humans and jinn, and He is truthful about everything He conveyed of the revelation. Thereafter, we remind ourselves to have the sincere intention for the sake of Allah in attending this session of Islamic knowledge, because having the sincere intention is a requirement to get the reward. So the Muslim, whenever he does a good deed, he has to have the sincere intention for the sake of Allah to get reward for that good deed. The reward is defined as the compensation that the Muslim receives in the hereafter for the good deeds that he did in this life among what makes him happy. An example of the reward that is guaranteed to the righteous Muslim in the grave is that his grave is expanded approximately 105 feet by 105 feet, and his grave is illuminated with a light similar to the light of the full moon, and the fragrance of paradise will be present in the grave. The sincere intention means for the Muslim to do the good deeds, seeking the acceptance of Allah only, and not the praise of the people. So alhamdulillah, we are here for the second class in the Lucid Word. And we're going to continue from where we left off. If you have a copy of the book, it is on page 10, about 10 lines down from the integrated text. And before we continue on, I'll just give a quick recap of what we read so far. Basically, we read the preface, which is explaining where this book comes from, explaining the style of the book, explaining that certain terms are transliterations that are semi-indicators of the original Arabic words, that they are not standalone identicals. They're secondary terms that they help the foreigner, the non-Arabic speaker, to be able to have a semi-indicator. They have an idea of how to say the word in Arabic, and then they have to know the pronunciation in Arabic. They have to learn the pronunciation. And also, the last thing from the preface that I found very important is that it states that the translation is not flawless. If there is something that is unequivocally incorrect in English, then obviously bring it up, and they accept the advice, they'll research it, they'll correct it if need be. There's something that there's room for it to be used in the English language. Don't rush to negate it or oppose it or bash it just because you have not heard it before, or just because you don't like it, or it doesn't fit your desires. Then we moved on to the introduction, which starts with the actual book, the summary of Abdullah al-Harari, which is comprehensive of the personal essential knowledge of the religion. And then it starts with the introduction, mentioning that this book is originally taken from Sulam al-Tawfiq, and that the fiqh, the Islamic law that is presented in it, is in the madhab by Imam al-Shafi'i, radiallahu anhu, and that one must pay due attention to this book by learning it, studying it, and reviewing the issues raised in this book until he memorizes them and they become embedded in his heart. So this is basically where we got to. And so we're going to continue on where we left off reading, middle of page 10, about 10 lines down from the integrated text. The author said, "Since knowing Allah and His Messenger and believing in them is the most important and best obligation, the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, started his book by discussing the essentials of belief, i.e., the creedal issues which the accountable person cannot do without." So, right before the beginning of the section, they mentioned that since the case is that knowing Allah and His Messenger and believing in them is the most important and best obligation, the author started by mentioning the essentials of belief. So after the introduction, after giving some background about the original text and some background about what the book contains, now the author, this is the first section of the book, and it pertains to the essentials of belief. Why? Because knowing Allah and His Messenger and believing in them is the most important obligation. It is the best obligation. It is the greatest obligation, which is to be Muslim. When somebody is Muslim, they have everything. When somebody is not a Muslim, they have nothing. This is a section dedicated to explaining the meaning of the two testifications of faith. It is obligatory upon all accountable persons who are pubescent, sane, and receive the basic call of Islam, i.e., whoever has been informed that no one is God but Allah and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, to embrace the religion of Islam immediately if they were kafirs. Footnote 1. The word kafir used in this book is an Islamic term used in the Quran, and the sayings of the Prophet ﷺ referring to a person who is not a Muslim, and kufr referring to an incident which renders a person as a kafir. Such incidents demonstrate irreverence to God, His knowledge, or what He ordained as glorified. Now, this is something that is unique about this book, or this explanation in English, is that throughout the entire book, they are not going to use the word blasphemer. They're not going to use the word blasphemy in the English language, because of something in English, which is that if you look at the definition of blasphemy in English, it doesn't cover all the things that the word kufr or kafir cover in the Arabic language. So if you look in the dictionary, of an English dictionary, you'll find that the word blasphemy is defined as the act of insulting or showing contempt or lack of reverence for God. And this is included in the definition of kufr. There is a type of kufr that it stems from an act of insulting or showing contempt or lack of reverence for God. Like, for example, throwing the Quran in the trash, like stepping on God's name, like saying, like objecting to God, like cursing God. All of that is kufr and blasphemy. But the definition in English, it is confined to that. So we're used to hearing the term blasphemy interchangeably with kufr, the term blasphemy to translate kufr. Yani, we can say that doing such and such thing takes the person out of Islam. Doing such and such thing makes the person a non-Muslim. Because essentially, a kafir is a non-Muslim. To put it as simple as possible, in the Arabic language, when we say kafir, we're talking about a non-Muslim, someone who is not a Muslim. Whether they are a little baby, whether they are someone who they encourage people to become Muslims, a non-Muslim that, for example, they're like, like a hippie, like a tree hugger, and they say, yeah, become Muslim, and and they say peace to the world and all these things. They're also a kafir. Even if they hug Muslims and kiss Muslims and they supposedly love Muslims, they're still a kafir. And then you have a non-Muslim. They're essentially a non-Muslim. Then you have a non-Muslim who they hate Islam, they hate Muslims, they oppose Islam, they oppose Muslims, and they wish to see every Muslim dead. And they spend their lives and their energy and their time and their money in different ways to undermine Islam, to undermine the Muslims, to hurt Islam, to hurt Muslims. They spend their time stopping people from going into Islam. They spend their time diverting people away from Islam. Those people are also non-Muslims, kafirs. So in the Arabic language, when we say about a person, kafir, we're essentially just talking about a person who's not a Muslim. Whether that non-Muslim is diverting people away from Islam or stopping people from embracing Islam or opposed to Islam or not. Just by them not being a Muslim, just by them being a non-Muslim, this is a kafir. Now, of course, some kafirs, they're worse than others. There's no doubt about that. On the spectrum of non-Muslims, some non-Muslims, they spend their lives killing Muslims. And that makes them worse. Some non-Muslims, they say, yeah, become Muslim, go ahead, be Muslim. And they'll let you, let's say, pray in their house. They'll let you, for example, preach in front of them, etc. They won't stop you because honestly they don't care. But they're still a kafir. They're still a non-Muslim. So when we say kafir in this book, we're referring to the non-Muslims. When we say kufr, we're referring to something that takes someone out of Islam or something that is the opposite of Islam. So The reason that they stayed away from the term blasphemy is because in English it's restricted, according to the dictionary definition, is restricted to only a certain type of kufr. A certain type of kufr. So that's what that footnote is about. Now back to the text. It is obligatory upon all accountable persons. Who are they? The person who is pubescent, sane, and received the basic call of Islam. That is an accountable person. This is what is called mukallaf in Arabic. Mukallaf. Accountable means that they are pubescent, sane, and receive the basic call of Islam. How do we judge someone as pubescent? By one of three things happening. Either they reach to 15 lunar years of age, so just by reaching that age, they're called pubescent. What does that mean? That means Islamically, they are no longer children. This is important. Islamically, once someone is considered pubescent, they're not judged as children anymore. Now, we're not saying that they might not require time to mature mentally or whatever, but they're not judged as children anymore. That's important to understand. So that, we'll get to that, why that's important. But once someone is pubescent Islamically, they are no longer judged as a child. They're no longer a child. So the first thing is, they reach 15 lunar years of age. If before that time, before they become 15 lunar years of age, they emit their sexual ejaculatory fluid. If before they reach that age, they emit their sexual ejaculatory fluid, they're also considered to be pubescent. What is the sexual ejaculatory fluid, which is commonly known for men as the term semen? So this is the fluid that is commonly known for men in English as semen. Now, women also have this fluid. Now, it might not be the exact same as the man's, and it might not come out exactly the same as the man's, but this fluid exists in the woman as well. This fluid is called mani in the Arabic language. So if the mani comes out of the person through whatever way, whether they were asleep or whether they did it themselves or whether it was through somebody else, if that fluid comes out of them before they reach 15 lunar years of age, they are considered to be pubescent. Now, sometimes, usually the natural way that it happens is through a wet dream. So when the child is like approaching 12, 13, maybe they'll have a wet dream. By them having the wet dream, now they are considered to be pubescent, even if they're not 15 lunar years of age yet. So we have two things mentioned already: becoming 15 lunar years of age, or emitting the sexual ejaculatory fluid known as mani in Arabic. The third thing is something that's specific to women only, which is called menstruation. So if a girl, before she turns 15 lunar years of age, she sees her period blood, from 9 to before she becomes 15 lunar years of age, she sees her period blood, now she's considered not a child anymore. Not a child anymore. Once the girl gets her period, if she's before 15 lunar years of age, from 9 to 15 lunar years of age, if she gets her period in that time, because if she bleeds before 9, it's not considered period. And there's a chapter about that. We'll get to that, we'll explain more. But from 9 to 15 lunar years, if the girl, she sees her period, now she is considered to be pubescent. She is no longer a child. So if someone is sane, someone is pubescent, we'll explain how that is. And sane, what does sane mean? Sane means that they have their mind, that their mind is working properly. They have the faculty of the mind. They are not someone that cannot tell the difference between a door and a human being. It's not related to intelligence. Sanity is not related to being smart or being dumb or being dull, slow to comprehend. Insanity is related to, do you have your mind or not? Do you have your mind or not? So if a person doesn't have their mind, they are insane. So the person who is pubescent and sane and received the basic call of Islam. What is that? What is the basic call of Islam? I.e., whoever has been informed that no one is God but Allah. That's the basic call of Islam. And that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. That is the basic call of Islam. That means, if you are sane and pubescent, and let's say a Muslim comes to you and tells you, no one is God except Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger, now you are accountable. And if you are accountable and currently not Muslim, then the first thing you have to do is become Muslim. The first thing you have to do is become Muslim. This is important to understand. Why? Because it means that it's not required for the person to know the details of Islam. It's not required for the person to know the rules of Islam, to be accountable. It's not required for the person to know that we forbid alcohol, that we forbid pork, that we forbid fornication, that the woman has to cover everything except her face and her hands. For the person to be accountable, this is not required. For the person to be a Muslim, it's not required that they know those things. What's required is that they're sane and pubescent, and that they believe in and say, no one is God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. Or any statement that carries that meaning. The person is not given any time to reflect and think. The person is not said to them, take some time to think about it. No, you have to become Muslim right now. Right away, without delay. Now, of course, this is something for you to know. Internally, it's for you to know. And outwardly, what you do is you push the person, you try to persuade them as smoothly as possible to become Muslim. Why? Because that's the obligation. Once the person is a Muslim, once the person is accountable, that's what they have to do first, is become Muslim. And you achieve that in the smoothest way, the best way as possible. What does that mean, Yani? For you, from your perspective, this person is now accountable. The first obligation that they have to do is become Muslim. And I do not accept for them at any time to be a non-Muslim. As long as you have that in your heart, that you don't accept for them to be a non-Muslim, that you don't say, oh well, it's okay for them to be in that state. As long as you don't do that, you'll be fine. And as long as you don't delay them from doing it, from becoming Muslim, you'll be fine. So if somebody comes to you and they tell you, I want to become Muslim now, how do I do it? You tell them right away. You don't tell them, go home and take a shower first. You don't tell them, you tell them right away. No one deserves to be worshipped except Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. That's it. Or in any way that they can say it. If they can't say the word Allah, you tell them, no one deserves to be worshipped except God. No one deserves to be worshipped except the Creator. And Muhammad is his messenger. If they can't say the word Muhammad, then you tell them to say Abul Qasim. If they can't say Abul Qasim, you tell them to say Abul Qasim. If you fear that they can't say that, you tell them, do you testify that no one deserves to be worshipped except God? Do you now testify that no one deserves to be worshipped except God? And they say yes. And that counts. Do you now testify that Muhammad is the messenger of God? And they say yes. That counts as a shahada. Embracing Islam is easy. So, that's how the author started the book.
The word informed includes what you're informed. Like, we have some heard or
Whoever has been informed. طيب. Let's look at what the author said. He said, and receive the basic call of Islam, i.e., whoever has been informed. It means that this sane and pubescent person, in whatever way that they received that basic message, for example, whether it was someone that told them, no one is God except Allah and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, or in any other way that message that they understood, yani that they received it, that counts too. So like for example, they read it on a billboard, that counts too as them having been informed. So they go and find out. So they go and search. Both are required. No, just for it to be completed, it has to be both. And they have to know this message: no one is God but Allah. Muhammad is His messenger. And they have to know that. So the first obligation is obligatory upon all accountable persons who are pubescent, sane, and receive the basic call of Islam, i.e., whoever has been informed that no one is God but Allah and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, to embrace the religion of Islam immediately if they were non-Muslims. Clear up till there? Are there any questions up till there? From the text, is anything unclear? Then it says, to remain steadfast to it, which is also after the person becomes Muslim, they remain steadfast to al-Islam. They have to have their hearts void of any intention to leave al-Islam. To remain steadfast to it in such a manner that the heart would be clear of any intent to renounce Islam in the future or any hesitation about it, because whoever intends to disbelieve in the future or hesitates about doing so falls into exiting from Islam immediately, falls into kufr immediately. So if someone, for example, they became Muslim and then afterwards they said, in a couple of years I will not be Muslim anymore, then immediately they leave Islam. Immediately they become non-Muslim. Immediately they stop being Muslim. If a person said in their heart, in 5 years I'll convert to something else, immediately at that moment that they have that intention, they become non-Muslim. Because you have to remain steadfast to Islam. Meaning that you have to have the intention in your heart that you're going to stay Muslim until death. That regardless what happens, you will never leave Islam. Regardless what happens. Whether you become the poorest person in the world or the sickest person in the world, if all of your family dies and your mom and your dad dies and your children die and your car disintegrates and your house blows up, whatever happens in this world, you're going to stay as a Muslim until death, until the end. That has to be in your heart, firm, certain. And it is also obligatory upon the accountable person to comply with what is obligatory upon them of its rules that the religion ordered them to follow. So, you have to be Muslim, stay Muslim, and adhere to Islam. This is the obligation of all the accountable persons. So, let's do a breakdown. You have everyone in this world can either be judged as a Muslim or not. Every single individual person is either judged as a Muslim or not. Every single human being, every single jinn is either judged as a Muslim or not. And each one of those, and each Muslim can either be judged as accountable or not. The Muslim who is accountable, what does he have to do? He already is Muslim, he already did the greatest obligation. Now what he has to do is adhere to the rules. Every single day in and day out. And at all times we have to obey Allah. Period. Through sickness and in health, through happiness or madness or sadness, whatever. We have to, through happiness or angry or being angry, not madness, being angry or being happy or being sad or being comfortable or uncomfortable or in a difficult situation or an easy one, at all these times we have to obey Allah. And the other side is the non-Muslim. So we have everybody in the world is either Muslim or not, and every Muslim is either accountable or not accountable. The accountable Muslim has to remain steadfast and adhere to the rules. And as for the non-Muslim, each non-Muslim is either accountable or not. Each non-Muslim is either accountable or they're not accountable. If they're accountable, then you know that they're saying pubescent and they receive the basic message of Islam. These three things are together. If they're not accountable, then we know one of these three things are missing. Right? If they're accountable, we know the first thing they have to do is become Muslim. And then after that, then now they're judged in like the second category, that they're Muslim who are accountable, so they have to adhere to the rules. Is that clear? That part is clear? This is attained by fulfilling all the obligations and abstaining from all the prohibitions, and in complying what is obligatory upon us of the rules of Islam. How do we achieve that? How do we do that? This is attained by fulfilling all the obligations and abstaining from all the prohibitions. It's that simple. It's one of those things that, for example, how do you get a six-pack? How do you get 20-inch biceps? You got to do that regimen. You have to lower the calorie intake. You can't have the cheesecake or the ice cream or the fast food, and you got to spend at least, let's say, it requires discipline. It requires effort. You're not just going to sit on your couch and get a six-pack. You're not just going to sit around and drink the sodas and eat the chips and you're going to get 20-inch biceps. My heck, MashaAllah. It's that simple. It's that simple. Even if we're not talking about superficial, cosmetic bodily things. How are you going to get that 4.0 GPA? Are you going to get it just by not studying? You're going to get it just by wasting your time on Netflix or YouTube or whatever? Is all of a sudden all the answers to the test just going to come to you just because you woke up? No. How do you achieve excellence? You have to work for it. Everything in life is like that. Every dunya thing is like that. Only those that are lazy, that are underachievers, that they're not striving for excellence or striving to rise high, they stay right where they are. They stay right where they are, and at the bottom of the barrel. And that's what they get. That's all that they'll get. So you cannot achieve excellence by not putting in effort. So same thing. How do you comply with what is obligatory upon you of the rules of Islam? Now, in this case, the path is easy. Meaning, you learn and implement with sincerity. That's it. What's left is your discipline and your motivation. So if you know what you have to do, all you got to do is just do it. Because even in those other things that we talked about, how do you get that six-pack? How do you get those 20-inch biceps? How do you become number one in, let's say, your sport or in your field? How do you get that 4.0 GPA? There could be many different ways. There could be many different ways, many different things that you try. Some through trial and error you find out. But generally speaking, you have to put effort. From this, it is known that the child who dies before pubescence is not held accountable in the hereafter for what they did. Now here the author is mentioning what is excluded from these conditions. Who's not accountable? Yes. Go ahead. So yeah, I'll answer that. So, but in order to get the clearest picture, it needs a little bit of background information. But the short answer is that this is not counted against them because they're not accountable. Although what they said is blasphemous, that is a blasphemy thing, it is a bad thing, it is kufr, right? The thing that they said is a kufr thing, a thing that is against Islam, outside of Islam, right? The opposite of Islam. But that kufr is not counted against him because he's not accountable. Just like if a non-pubescent Muslim child, he were to go on a killing spree, let's just say that. They go on a killing spree, it's not going to be counted against them because they're not accountable. Now, usually it's the case that children, they don't do that. But hypothetically, if that were to happen, it's not counted against them. They would not go to hell for that. So same thing with things that are kufr, it's not counted against the child. So that's the short answer to that. Because they're not accountable. Now, if that does happen to a non-pubescent Muslim child, the parent, what they do is they tell this child, this is kufr, say your shahada. They're ordered. The parent tells them, this is kufr, say your shahada. They're ordered to do that. As a way to get them, to teach them, to get them accustomed to, if this happens to them in the future, to come back to Islam, so that they know what to do. And we'll talk a little bit more about the whole concept. Basically, the short version is that when a child is born, right, who is he born to? Is the child born to someone who is Muslim or not? If the child is born to someone who is Muslim, then the child is judged as Muslim by affiliation. Meaning that if that child were to die, how do we treat him? How do we treat that child? We treat them as we would a Muslim, right? Because even if the child is born for 1 hour and then they die, what's inside of their heart? The newborn baby. What's inside of their heart? Nothing. The newborn baby is born without any creed. It's a newborn baby. It doesn't know anything. There's evidence for this in the Quran. There's evidence for that in the Quran. When we come out of our mother's wombs, we don't know anything. And so, but this baby is still judged as Muslim through affiliation through his parent. Now as the child gets older, and when he becomes at the age of mental discrimination, he starts to understand and he starts to become indoctrinated, and his heart begins to be filled with information. Now he holds a creed, right? When he becomes mumayyiz. But until he becomes pubescent, he won't be accountable. As long as he's sane and he has received the basic message. But since he's born to a Muslim parent, he's affiliated already through the Muslim parent, of course he's received the basic message, and he would then, in that case, be the only thing that's left for his accountability is to reach pubescence. No.
The Muslim father or the Muslim, right?
Or who?
I mean, one of the parents or the father, maybe the mother doesn't.
Yes, so anyway, without going into too much detail, as long as that child was born to a Muslim parent, he would be judged as Muslim by affiliation.
Even if the father is not Muslim?
So just the mother, for example.
Yeah.
Yes. So from this it is known that the child who dies before pubescence is not held accountable in the hereafter for what they did. Because they're not pubescent, they're missing one of the 3 conditions. Likewise is the person who becomes insane before pubescence and their insanity continues until after pubescence and dies while insane. So this is another scenario where the person is not accountable. Because we said one of the things for accountability is that they're sane. If they're not sane, then they're not accountable. But for insanity, keep in mind that it has to be at a time when they were already not accountable. Let's say that a person, they were sane and pubescent, and then they received the basic message about Islam, and then they became insane. Right? Let's say a person was accountable and then they became insane. In this case, we don't say, oh, they're insane now, they're not accountable. No, at one point they're already accountable. Then they became insane. So whatever they did before they became insane, they're held accountable for it. We're talking about someone who was never accountable in the first place, and they lost their mind, and they remained insane until death. This person, he is not accountable for what he has done. Similarly, one is not accountable if they were pubescent and sane, but never received the call of Islam, i.e. the 2 testifications of faith. Therefore, anyone, so basically, if a person is sane and pubescent, and this is a possible scenario, and it's something that might be the case of some people today. They are sane and pubescent, So they're sane and they're 15 lunar years and up. Let's say they're sane and they're like 40 years old, and they've been living their entire life as a Christian or a Jew or a Buddhist or a Satan worshiper or an atheist, and they never received the basic message of Islam. They never became accountable, and they die. They don't go to hell, because not being accountable means that you do not get, that the things you did that were bad, the things that were bad things, they don't get held against that person. That's what not accountable means. It means that they won't get judged for what they did. They won't go to hell. So it is possible, even though rare, possible but rare, that a person living in today's world would be sane and pubescent, and they would live their lives without ever receiving the basic message: no one deserves to be worshipped except God, and Muhammad is his messenger. But if that is the case, if there is, let's say, someone who lived their whole life, they're sane and pubescent, and they lived their whole life without receiving the basic message of Islam, we say that person is not accountable. That person will not go to hell. That person will enter paradise, and they are known in Arabic as Ahlun Najah, the people who are saved. The people who are saved. But those people that they died like that, and that they enter paradise, they do not have the same status as the Muslim, and they do not get the ultimate reward in paradise, which is to see Allah. The seeing Allah, which is the ultimate reward in paradise, the non-Muslim who died as not accountable does not get that. They get the general reward of paradise, which is immortality, never getting sick, constant euphoria, constant enjoyment, everlasting happiness, right? But they don't get to see Allah, which is the ultimate reward. The best thing that the people in paradise enjoy, the Muslims, that they enjoy, is when they see Allah, unlike the creation is seen. And there's a part in the book where we talk about that. But just to let you know for now, just so that nobody falls for the whispers of the devil and says that they wish that they never became accountable, because there is nothing better than being Muslim. Islam has the virtue. Think about the life of the non-Muslim. It's an empty life. It's a sad, depressing life. They go through life. They might pretend like they enjoy their life on the outside, but in reality, it's filled with sadness and confusion and doubts and depression. Because at the end of the day, they're going to have to put their head on a pillow. Regardless of all the posturing and all the pretending that they do on social media, and they'll go here on this vacation and that vacation. How many beaches can you go to before you get bored? How many drinks of alcohol can you have before you die of rotten liver? How much drugs can you do and get high from before you just have had enough and you say that's it? How many clubs can you go to before you're just bored of the same old thing over and over? The life of the non-Muslim is an empty life, because all that they have is this. Because the non-Muslim doesn't know what's going to happen after you die. The non-Muslim doesn't know what the purpose of life is. The non-Muslim doesn't understand, doesn't know how to reconcile all these things that are happening in the world, why things happen the way they do. For example, this person, they went to sleep and they woke up and they were dead. This person, they were nice to everyone, and somebody comes and shoots them in the head and kills them. And they don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to deal with it. And then they see other people that are evil and wicked, and they get away with things and nothing happens to them. They don't know how to deal with it. They strive and run for this life that keeps going away from them, and they keep on going in their same cycle, waking up, going to work, slaving for somebody else 9 to 5, because most of the non-Muslims, they don't do what they, let's say, want to do, in the sense of at their career goals. Like every person that was in the non-Muslim school system, when you're in kindergarten or first grade, they ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Some of them say astronaut, some of them say a scientist, some of them say basketball player, some of them say this, some of them say that, some of them say a movie star, some of them say a doctor, some of them say a lawyer. How many of them actually became that? Probably like 1%. Even less. The rest of them, maybe 0.5% actually became the doctor or the lawyer or the movie star or the tennis player or the astronaut. And then the other 99.5%, they became 9-to-5 slavers. Bagging groceries or, working at some whatever. Just so that they can pay some bills, just so that they can go buy food, so that they can fill their stomachs and their bodies with poison, because most of the things that they eat is poison. So that they can do what? So that they can have 2 days out of the week, a Saturday and a Sunday, to go and do what? To go and spend money at a movie theater, at a baseball game, at a football game, at a soccer game. How depressing and lame is that? How depressing and lame is that? That's why they have their lives revolve around these things, what they call entertainment, because it's a distraction from the reality of their situation. So nobody can ever say that they wish they were a non-accountable Muslim, because this is a terrible thing. The virtue is in Al-Islam, the fulfillment is in Al-Islam. Just because Al-Islam requires you to be a decent, good person, not to be someone that is immersed in vices, not to be someone that's immoral, just because you can't eat pork and drink alcohol and do drugs and fornicate. You can still have what they call fun and be Muslim. You just can't do things that are bad. You just can't do things that are immoral, unethical, prohibited. SubhanAllah. Now, what we mentioned, that if a person is sane and pubescent, but they did not receive the basic call of Islam, and they die that way, they won't go to hell. This judgment is the opinion of the majority of Sunni scholars. This is the opinion of the majority of Sunni scholars. So there's another opinion, which is a valid one, but it's the minority opinion of the Sunni scholars. They say if a person is sane and pubescent, and he hasn't received the basic message of Islam, but he uses his mind, he uses deductive reasoning to reach to the conclusion that this universe has a beginning, therefore it has a creator, and that creator is unlike any of the creations, and he doesn't worship the sun or the moon or anything else, that person is saved. And whoever is sane and pubescent and does not use their mind to come to the conclusion that this universe has a beginning and therefore it has a creator, and that creator is unlike anything, and instead they worship a tree or a person or something, that one is not saved. So the minority opinion, which is a valid one, a valid opinion in Islam, is that even the person who didn't receive the basic call, but they, without using their mind, they didn't use their mind and they worshipped a statue or the sun or the moon, they're not excused. Because at least with their mind, even if they didn't hear the call, but with their mind they can know that the sun is a creation like that, and therefore it's not the creator of the universe. Okay? So these are two valid opinions. The majority opinion is what we mentioned. The minority opinion is that even if the person didn't receive the basic call, but they used their mind to come to the conclusion that this universe has a creator, and that creator is unlike anything, and that's the most that they got to, and they didn't worship anything else, these are saved. But the ones who fell short in using their mind, and they worship a creation, they are not saved. Okay? The author said, therefore anyone who understands Arabic then hears the testifications of faith in the adhan, call to the prayer, while being pubescent and sane, is accountable. So here they give a realistic scenario of how a person is sane and pubescent, and they receive the basic message, and they become accountable. that realistic scenario is that if someone, they understand Arabic, like who can think of a person that is not Muslim and understands Arabic? Like someone that lives in Egypt that is a Coptic Christian. There are many Arabs that speak Arabic, understand Arabic, of Arabic descent, Arabic blood, and they are Christians. Some of them are Coptic, some of them are Maronites, some of them are what they call Eastern Orthodox. They're walking through the streets of Egypt, of Cairo. Cairo has like one mosque on every block. I've never been there, but this is what I've heard. A lot of mosques densely situated. And during the time for prayer, it's not like here in America where people's apps start going off. No. In the Muslim countries, when the Dhuhr time is in, you hear it on the loudspeakers. Allahu Akbar. The call to prayer starts. And that mosque does it, and the mosque right next to it does it, and the mosque across the street does it. So it's a lot of adhans. You hear the adhan multiple times a day in a Muslim country. Clearly. Whether you're inside your house, or on the street, or in the taxi cab, or in the car, you hear it. So that sane and pubescent, non-Muslim Arab, when they hear that adhan through the air, what do they hear? They hear, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, and they hear, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. They understand Arabic, don't they? Yes. They know the meanings of those words. Yes. They are now accountable. They are now accountable. What do they got to do? They got to go straight to that masjid, or straight to the first Muslim that they know, and find out how to embrace Islam right away. And usually, the case is that those Christian Arabs that live in those countries, they know. They know the deal. They know what's up. They know what it is. They just purposely don't do it. But they're accountable. So if they die that way, they go to hell forever. Na'udhu billahi min dhalik. So if they were to die without embracing Islam, they deserve the everlasting torture in hellfire. Which means they will be for sure 100% tortured until no end. Na'udhu billah. And this is why it's so essential that if a person is an accountable non-Muslim, that they become Muslim right away. Because if they die while falling short in becoming Muslim, if they die while delaying that, they go to hell forever. And there's nothing worth going to hell forever. Nothing worth going to hell forever. SubhanAllah. Page 12, among what the accountable one, whether a Muslim or a non-Muslim, must know, accept, and believe in absolutely in one's heart at all times, and utter immediately if one was an original non-Muslim or an apostate, are the two shahadas, the two testifications of faith. Or otherwise, if the accountable person was already a Muslim, one must utter them in the prayer. The two shahadas are called in English the two testifications of faith, which are Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Then there's the transliteration there. I testify that no one is God except Allah, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. May Allah raise his rank and protect his nation from what he fears for it. So, back to where it says, among what the accountable one, whether a Muslim or non-Muslim, must know, accept, and believe in absolutely in one's heart at all times, and utter immediately if one was original kafir, are the two shahadas. So, what do we have to, what does the accountable non-Muslim have to do? He has to know, accept, and believe in, and say the two shahadas to embrace Islam. And he has to believe in this absolutely in his heart at all times, and absolutely without any doubt at all times, and throughout all his circumstances. And he has to utter it immediately to become Muslim. This is an important point, meaning that how does the non-Muslim enter into Islam? The only way for the one who has a working tongue is to say those words while believing in them. That's the only way. There is no other way. To say those words, or something that has that meaning in whatever language that he knows. It does not have to be in Arabic. He does not have to use the term Allah, but he has to say Muhammad properly. And if not, then he says Abul Qasim. And if not, then he says Abul Qasim. And if not, like we said, you tell him, do you now testify that no one is God except Allah? And they say yes. And then you tell them, do you now testify that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah? And they say yes. Everybody can say yes. Now for the person that does not have a working tongue, they use signs. And meaning that there's no way for a person not to be Muslim. There's always a way. For the Muslim who is already accountable, he doesn't have to say the Shahada to enter into Islam. He's already Muslim. He's already accountable. So what does he have to do? He has to say the Shahada in every single prayer for the validity of the prayer. It's an obligation. So that's how it is in the school of Imam al-Shafi'i. He has to say the Shahada not to embrace Islam, but because saying the Shahada at least once in a lifetime is an obligation. And according to some scholars. Because some scholars, they said, you don't have to say the Shahada in the prayer for the prayer to be valid. So if a person is already saying the pubescent, if a person is already saying and is already judged as Muslim, and the last thing that's left for their accountability is to become pubescent. Once they become pubescent, khalas, they're already Muslim, they're already judged as Muslim through affiliation. When they became pubescent, what is the creed inside their heart? Is it the creed of Islam? Yes, so nothing has changed. But they have to at least say the Shahada once in their lifetime, not to embrace Islam, but just to fulfill that obligation in other than the school of Imam al-Shafi'i. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. We reach to the bottom of page 12, where it says, since the testifications of faith are the basis of the call to Islam, it is an obligation for the Muslim to know their meaning. So next class, inshallah, next week, we're going to be starting with the meaning of the first Shahada. Now, I have a suggestion. I propose that, we do question and answer. I'm not going to say I'm going to quiz you. I'm not going to say I'm going to give you a test. I'm going to say, I'm going to ask you certain things from the book. I'm going to ask you, for example, who is the accountable person? And then one of you is going to raise your hand and is going to say, the accountable person is the one who is sane, pubescent, and received the basic call of Islam. And then I'm going to ask, what is the basic call of Islam? And then one of you is going to raise your hand, I'm going to call on you, and you're going to say, to be informed that no one is God but Allah, and Muhammad is His messenger. Then I'm going to say, how is someone pubescent? What makes someone pubescent? And then one of you is going to raise your hand and you're going to say, by becoming 17 years of age, by the emission of their mani or their sexual ejaculatory fluid, or 15 lunar years of age, or emitting the mani, or the menstruation. For example, this is something that we're going to do before every class. And my expectation of you is that you'll be able to answer those questions, because they are so simple, so easy. All that it requires is, if you can retain it from now, more power to you. That's good for you. That first time you hear something, it stays with you. If not, just look it over. Read the book once or twice. Look at the class again. It's on Instagram. It's up there. Yeah. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that you should refrain from using it. It's more, and as far as the dictionary definition is concerned, and I'm not going to say don't use the word blasphemy. I'm going to say what the person, as long as you tell the person, when I say blasphemy, I mean something that is opposite of Islam, not Islam. When I say blasphemer, I mean someone who is not a Muslim. Any questions about what we mentioned? If anything was not clear, yes.
I was hearing through the phone, I didn't hear clearly the dictionary difference between blasphemy and kufr.
Oh, so I was saying that in this book, they use the word kafir. Here, and in the footnote here, they say that when they say kafir, they're referring to a non-Muslim. Because kafir is a word that is in the religious text that is describing a non-Muslim. Now, I was saying that they're using the word kafir instead of using the word blasphemer. And I was explaining that the reason that they used that, or that they did that, is because the dictionary definition of blasphemy in your English language is the act of insulting or showing contempt or lack of reverence for God, which is something that is kufr. It is something that makes someone a non-Muslim. If they curse Allah, or they insult Allah, or they insult the religion, or they show contempt or lack of reverence for God, like disrespect, this is blasphemy, no doubt. This is kufr, no doubt. But kufr and kafir has a much broader, it includes more things. It includes more things than just that, what is said in English. And this is just my speculation about why they chose to do that in this book. Now, I just wanted to point that out so that, because it's going to happen a lot in the book, every single time. It's going to say kafir or kufr, kafir or kufr. Okay? So I wanted to explain that. That was just my insight, my speculation.
There are matters that are judged as kufr, but they are not falling under the dictionary definition of blasphemy.
It appears that way. My understanding is that it appears that way. It's, if someone, for example, says kufr, then there's some things that are included in that wouldn't be included in the dictionary definition of the English word blasphemy. So that's what it appears to be. I've not done much deep research on this. I'll confer with my colleagues about it, those who speak English, those who have learned, and we'll come to a conclusion about it, inshallah. Any other questions? طيب, barakallahu feekum. May Allah Ta'ala reward you for your efforts. You, this time, know that the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he said, the one who he goes out, or he goes out and he learns one ayah, one verse of the Quran, is more rewardable for him than praying 100 optional rak'ahs. And the one who goes out and learns a chapter of the Islamic knowledge is more rewardable for him than praying 1,000 optional rak'ahs. So in this short time that you spent and that you put effort, it's not like in the past where you had to ride your camel or ride your horse or ride your donkey or just walk. Now you get to ride your nice comfortable car, but with a good intention you get a lot of reward. May Allah reward you for that. Barakallahu feekum. I hope that you see the reward for this on your pages on Judgment Day, and hopefully we can be consistent until we finish the book. And inshallah, after that we'll go to another book. نهلل لا إله إلا الله اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات وبارك الله فيك. Yeah, whoever has a copy of the book, bring it along with you. Bring a pen, make your annotations and your commentaries.